Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I'm James Shore, and this is the Art of Agile Development Book Club. Today, we're discussing investing in change, and I'm very pleased to welcome Diana Larsen as our special guest today. Diana is a change guru and Agile expert who is best known for her book, Agile Retrospectives, Making Good Teams Great, which she authored with Esther Derby. She is also the author of several other excellent books besides, and co-creator of the Agile Fluency Model. Diana, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. It's good to see some friendly faces on the screen.
Oh yeah, we get so many great participants. Thank you all for joining us. As I said, today's topic is investing in change, and I'm going to get things started by reading an excerpt from a chapter of the book. Speaking of the book, the print book is now out. As I mentioned last week, Diana was telling me that she's already stickied hers.
Sticky notes in mine. Mine has become festooned already.
Yeah. So to celebrate, I am giving away a free copy of the print book to one person who participated in the Discord discussion over the past week. So stay tuned until the end for that drawing. You can also buy a copy from Amazon or your favorite bookseller. And I will go ahead and put the Amazon link into the chat. There it is. All right. Now, so back to the excerpt, Chapter 5, Invest in Change. You've decided that Agile will make your teams more successful. You know which zones have the best cost-benefit trade-offs. You figured out which investments your company needs to make. Now, how do you make it happen? Understanding change. Change is disruptive, and introducing Agile is no exception. Exactly how disruptive it is depends on how many teams are affected and how well you manage the change. If you have one team that's eager to try Agile with your organization's full support, it doesn't have to be a big deal. If you're trying to change 50 teams in an organization that's unfamiliar with Agile ideas, well, now it's a very big deal. And that is what we're going to talk about today, is what is involved with Agile change. So our first discussion topic is, have you been part of a change or led a change, Agile or not? And what was it like? We'd love to hear some stories from your experience. And Diana, I know you have been part of quite a few changes. What is change like for people?
What is change like for people? Well, it's disruptive. I mean, in the last year and a half or so, we have all been through a really big change that came on us unexpectedly. Like sometimes organizational change comes on people in the organization, and it takes a little while to adjust, even for those folks even for a welcome change. It creates a point in time where our expectations about the future are somewhat disrupted. Our expectations about kind of what are the rules of the game get disrupted. And all those things have to be figured out anew, right? And so it's not surprising. I mean, in your book, you refer to the Satir change model, and there are a bunch of other change models out there. William Bridges has a good one. There's some other ones, and they all reflect the same dynamic, that when a change is recognized or announced, at first it feels foreign. It feels, this isn't what I'm used to. And then we go on to create the new world that we're going to live in. But it's and so I'm amused right now by all the people who keep saying, well, I want to get back to normal. It's like, at this point, there is no going back. And so watching for that realization to happen in an organization when you're trying to do change in an organization is an important moment. It's like, when are people realizing that we just really do need to co-create a future? And it's not going to be the same as the future we had before. And I mean, the one thing that I actually like about change, that I really love about change, is that in many ways it's very predictable. We've got a lot of experience doing changes with people, experiencing changes in our own personal lives. And there are patterns there that we can rely on. And so we can watch for those. We can watch for when people start having their transforming idea, or really get engaged in creating the new future, or we can know how to help them through the times when everything seems disrupted, even if they were fans of the change, even if they are looking forward to it. There's still that still happens, right? And so we can know that we're going to need to help people through that. We're not going to know that the people who are just, if it's a chosen change, like in an organization by someone, we're going to know that there are some people who were involved in that choice who are going to be way ahead in the process of the people who are just now being made aware of it, right? And so it'll be kind of waves of disruption going through your organization. So all those kinds of things, I think, are just important to recognize, to know that those patterns are there. They're human patterns. There's no judgment about them. And we're just moving right along.
Yeah. Love to hear from all of you in the audience. Please feel free to raise your hand and bring in your thoughts. Diana, you mentioned that the change is predictable, and that's nice. And I'm working with a company right now. We're just 2 weeks into a major change, and those first 2 weeks, there was this really predictable reaction of, this is terrible. And not only that, not only is this terrible, but it's not terrible because it's difficult for me to change, but it's terrible because you made bad choices. But now, 2 weeks in, we are seeing that point where some people are like, well, actually, I can make this work. And that's a really, that first everything is broken and it's all your fault period is not super fun
Right.
for me as somebody helping lead this change. But seeing people realize, oh, I can make this work, I do think that make it work point is really gratifying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And not everybody gets there right away, and keeping it, I think that is the point, or around that time is the point where you really do want to be communicating that this is not all going to be imposed, that the people who are being impacted are also going to have an opportunity to engage in the creation. And that's, I think, when it continues to be kind of a coerced, imposed change, is when people stay grumpy the longest.
Right.
But if you can begin to communicate that this is, we're all into we know we couldn't stay where we were, but we are all now in some kind of uncharted territory, and we're going to have to figure out our way through this together. That can be kind of a relief for a lot of folks.
So what do other people think? What have your experiences with change been? Over on the Discord, and there, as usual, there has been some fantastic conversations on the Discord, and I'm going to go ahead and post the invite link to the Discord in case you don't have it. There it is. Over on the Discord, we had several responses to this one. Jerome wrote, I'm currently about 2.5 years into an Agile transformation. I came in fairly early as I was interested in what was going on, but I wasn't around for the initial discussions. Our org had an outside consulting group come in to help with the change. We had a single coach to start off with. We had started with a single software team trying to work on a greenfield application. I don't remember exactly how long we ran with a single team, but I don't think it was much longer than a couple of months. We then spun up multiple teams consisting of all our developers. We found Scrum Masters from anyone who would volunteer and showed interest. I was one of those people. The original team stopped working on that greenfield application and went back to working on the legacy code. We did not hire any additional coaches to support the increase in teams. We did eventually hire one technical coach and one process coach. And then COVID hit, and we had to transition all of this to remote. So there's one example of change that seemed pretty typical to you, Diana.
Yeah, I think so. And particularly that last part, it's like we never get the luxury of just making our way through a single change until we get to the end and we can kind of say, well, we're settling in now. Now from here on, it'll just be Kaizen now, no more Kaikagu, right? Right.
Right.
Well, often is not a new change. A new change hits us midstream, or we're managing. Plus, any personal changes that people are having in their own lives. So I do think that's pretty typical.
Mm-hmm.
That we end up dealing with more than one thing changing at a time, for sure. Yeah.
Jim York has a comment. Jim, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, James. And good to see you, Diana.
Good to see you, Jim.
Having seen a lot of agile, in air quotes, transformations over the years, the one thing that, and this resonates, I think, or the thing that resonated with me, Diana, what you just said, is the predictability. And one of the things that I found extremely predictable is the fragility of most transformations. Yeah. You go through these waves of change, as Diana mentioned, and sometimes you hit one of those waves and it's like you've activated the corporate antibodies and they're coming out to destroy, this foreign thing that's come into the organization, which kind of connects, James, back to the Virginia Satir change model. It's that transforming idea is, let's get rid of the foreign element. So though they seldom end up at that higher plateau as a result of that decision, often it's continuing downward spiral. But that fragility is something I think that is also predictable, that you need to be constantly aware of the next challenge, the next set of stakeholders that need to be brought on board, and also some thinking about this proactively with the business, because often Agile's imposed by what's considered to be the IT or the development side of the shop, and business is brought in late. And my experience has been bringing in business too late inevitably results in a falling away of a pursuit of agility. Organizations that bring in the business, or perhaps even agility is pulled by the business, tend in my experience to be more effective and more sustainable in this. But all of that is also at risk of a change in leadership within the organization. You get a new CEO, and all of a sudden, all the efforts that you put into place to make the change, almost overnight, goes away. So I'm interested in hearing the reaction of, from both James and Diana, but also from others here, on this call. Is how do we deal, with that fragility? Because it's not agile. Agile is supposed to build in some resilience to change, and I don't mean resisting change. I mean being able to take the change and successfully navigate that change curve that we see in the Virginia Satir model. And you see that every sprint, right? You take in some new work, and by the end of the sprint, you're supposed to have that done if you're using Scrum as the framework. So if a team has 2-week sprints, that's 26 times you go through that change curve in a year in making changes to the product and also making improvements in your process. So I would imagine over a period of time, we're building in a capability to the teams to be able to handle change. But why is it that all of a sudden that capability that we've been building can literally disappear in a moment? I mean, teams that were truly agile, going remote should not have been that big of a challenge, quite frankly. But we saw a lot of organizations that were agile in name. When COVID hit, all of a sudden, all of that just poof, it was gone.
Mm-hmm. This is a good lead into our next discussion prompt, which is what have you seen work and not work when people try to create change? Drew Bryan on the Discord said, work, team driving change with leadership support and empowerment. Not work, teams driving change without leadership support, or leaders driving change without teams fully embracing and owning the change. And that seems to tie very much into what you're talking about, Jim. Yeah. I have to say that the number one reason I have seen for successful agile teams failing is new leadership coming in and with a new idea of how the organization should work, and blowing it up, either intentionally or unintentionally. What about you, Diana? How would you react to what Jim was
Yeah,
saying?
well, I was just thinking in the book, I really like the way you talk about the change there, because you start talking about getting management buy-in. And I think what happens an awful lot in organizations is somebody, even in the executive suite, may decide, we need to make this change to Agile, but they don't actually do the work to understand the change, right? And that is part of the buy-in process, right? And I learned a long time ago, doing work process redesign change in organizations in the 80s and 90s, that it's critical to start with the people who are going to continue to enable the change. So, I really appreciated the fact that the first thing you address in that chapter, after some other things, but is getting management buy-in. Well, when you're talking about buy-in, getting management buy-in, because so many organizations think they should start at the teams. Oh, well, we'll just bring somebody in to help the teams. And that it's wrong way around.
Yeah.
We need those managers to know how to create a good environment for the teams, and so that's really important. And then go ahead.
Everybody's a fan of change as long as somebody else is doing the changing.
Yeah.
Go ahead and continue your thought.
Well, I think that's then I like that you didn't talk about the team getting buy-in from the team, like really engaging with them, not just saying, here's what's going to happen to you, but let's co-create. And then finally, making sure that you've got your stakeholders engaged as well. What is the larger environment that this team needs to exist in? And what is that environment, whether it's customers or people who hand off to the team or whomever it might be? What is their role in this, and helping everybody understand that kind of sequential way, and then continually, as Demi says after that. I think it's really important. But yeah, Jay,
welcome.
Hi.
Yeah.
So we're just talking about the fragility and where change needs to be supported from. And there's a technique that I've tried to use with mixed success to address that. We started with our team and said, here's the change we want to create for ourselves. What do we need? What support do we need from the organization for that? And we made, from one perspective, a list of demands, but like the things we would need from our management to be able to do this and continue to do this. And we went to our first manager and asked, will you support us in doing this? And once we got agreement from them, we said, now we go to the next manager up and the next manager up. And we worked our way up the chain of the organization until we had this full chain of support, like at each level, yes, I will do this part. One thing that happened in that process is we might say, we want our desks or offices rearranged. And the manager might say, oh, I can't do that. That's beyond my control. That's okay. I need your support for these parts. We'll go to your manager when we're ready and ask for support for those parts. So that was how we set up sort of structural support for what we were doing. And part of the idea was when that reorg comes, when somebody in that leadership change gets swapped out, their manager above and below will help recreate the norm. We'll say, this weird thing we're doing here, yes, it is completely normal. And then the person coming in feels like they should adapt to that norm and we'll be able to continue it. That was the idea. The reorgs came so fast that there was no time for the norms to recreate themselves. In just a few weeks, we had 3 people in that chain get swapped out. And then there was no more momentum around those norms and we couldn't rebuild it. So that's how that fell apart. But it worked for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that leadership support, that management support is so important. I do remember, and Diana, I imagine you remember this as well, back in the early days of Agile, when extreme programming was the big deal and it was all these sort of bright-eyed people who were eager to do stuff, regardless of whether or not they had support. I remember people saying, hey, we're going to come in on the weekend with our screwdrivers. We're going to rearrange the furniture. We're going to do this without our management support. And I heard several stories of that working, but I also heard a lot of stories of people burning out, trying, and it eventually, those organizational antibodies did come in and they did sort of crush the spirit, and especially the person who was acting as the translator to pretend like everything was working as normal in the organization. What about you, Diana? What would you what have you seen work particularly well in a change?
Well, we talked about, making sure that we've worked with the managers and given them the skills and the understandings that they need to work in a different kind of paradigm, basically. We're thinking, or if we're looking at a move to Agile or anything that is really, when I was doing work process design early before Agile, we were still talking about, more humane ways of working and more and things that engaged people more and all of those things that we're still talking about today. So, making sure that the managers understand their role in that, and that maybe Jay, it was that the parallel managers to your chain weren't involved in that, and so that creates a little more robust ecosystem, right? If we make sure that all the managers understand that this is going to be happening and what their particular role is. But also, I think it's really important to never get on the wrong side of facilities or the custodial staff. And when you said that, I immediately flashed on the movie Office Space, right? Where he goes in over the weekend and he dismantles his cube and gets a window wall and all that stuff. But of course, in the end, he's no longer working in software. He's now in construction, right? So, I've encountered this a lot of times. I've encountered times when there's been support and things have worked out and there hasn't been too much other change, and people really did get to, some version of the promised land, right? And then a lot of times when it hasn't happened, when either new management or one thing or another dismantles it. But what I've noticed is, and I used to really go through kind of a dark night of the soul, like as a consultant, can I really, keep doing it? Is it in my integrity to come in and do this when I see it get dismantled so many times? Shouldn't I warn them that this is going to happen or whatever it is? And but then I started running into people who had been through the change, gotten landed in a place that really felt good to them, and then had it disrupted. And what I discovered is those people were never satisfied with working in any other way again. And they constantly were looking for ways to improve their work because now they knew it was possible. And at some point in my consulting career, I just decided, you know what, if that's all I accomplish, if I can just give people this new vision of what work can be like, I'm going to be satisfied with that. And if the organization is willing to pay for that and then disrupt it, I'm not part of their decision process. I'm just gonna go for that, because I do think it's important to, find ways to help people understand that work does not have to be demoralizing and uncomfortable. That you really can get joy and meaning and what ease, Brian Merrick's 4 things, right? Discipline, joy, ease. You really can get those things in those from your workplace, and you can look forward to going to work on Monday morning if you've created the right environment. And so I think the more we can spread that message, the better.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my philosophy of change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Diana, the book, we're talking about, the importance of looking at change from all these different directions. And the book talks about the importance of manager, team member, and stakeholder buy-in, as you mentioned. In your experience, and for all of you, those you watching, love to hear your thoughts as well. How do these groups react to change differently and similarly? What do you see in terms of how to work with those groups, especially when it comes to change?
For me, it's a little bit different. I mean, I think it's lots of different approaches for different people in different situations, not just manager, team, and stakeholder, but is it a group that I want to have buy-in, or is it an individual I want to have buy-in, or, you might have different approaches there. And also, what do I mean by buy-in? I mean, as you know, when we have our Agile Fluency workshop or Fluency Model workshops, we talk about understanding, do you need this person to be all in and right next to you, helping you make the change happen? Or is it enough that they just don't get in the way? Is that all the buy-in you need from them? Or, do you need some help now and then? Or, understanding sort of where they are now and where you're going to need them to be in order to make this change effectively, I think is a really important piece to understand. And that's how we talk about management and team buy-in, because we know for sure we need some of those people to help make it happen. Stakeholders is a little bit different story. Some of them, we need them really close on board. Other ones, like facilities, if facilities or IT, depending on if we're working co-located or remotely, how much support from them are we going to need, and how are we going to engage them to get that? So it's really a process of thinking that through. Who do we need on board, and how much do they need to be on board, and what is compelling to them in terms of their willingness to be a part of this. And I think that's how we have to frame it, is we need you to be a part of this, not
Yeah.
Anyway, I see Michael has his hand up, so I'm gonna
I'll give him invite him in just a moment. One of my favorite tools that you introduced me to is what you ended up putting in the book in one of the sections you wrote, the impediment removal section, talking about looking at the people who are involved and how much do you need their help. I personally find that it's really useful to put myself in their shoes and ask myself, what is it like for this person? What did they get out of this change? And how can I talk in terms of what they care about rather than, what I care about or what the organization wants, but what do they want specifically? So of course we need everything to be individual, Diana, but do you see a difference between the way managers tend to think about change and the way team members think about change?
It depends so much on the manager. Well, and the team. It's hard for me to make those kind of global things, but I think we there's a way of having conversations with people, like that you alluded to, about what's going on for you in the current situation. What, is everything just hunky-dory and you're really happy with the way things are? Or are there a few things you'd like to see be a little bit different? Could you tell me about those things? And if you had, if those things were to change in some way, a little bit or a lot, how could you recognize that you had gotten what you needed out of that? And then, in a larger way, and then what broader benefit would that bring to you? And I think, you can have that conversation that looks a little bit differently with every group or individual that you encounter. And you can get so much information that way. And it's a skill that you practice. It has to come across as natural. You have to be sincere in your curiosity about what it is they need and what they might get out of getting what they think they need, and you can really learn a lot about how resilient they already are or not by having that conversation. I mean, you get a lot of information through that. And I always think that's a really good place to start with whomever I'm coming up against. Yeah. And then, then you've got people who are trying to do the work and people who are supporting the people who are trying to do the work. And those, like you said, those different perspectives are going to color what you hear, and you need to be prepared for that.
Yeah. Diana, what's the first thing that you would do if you were asked to lead an agile change, and what would come next?
Oh, well, I mean, I've in some ways I've said it a lot already, but I would start with a lot of interviews, a lot of talking to a lot of people that will discovering who is integral to the change and making sure that they are interested in and ready to do some of the things that they're going to need to do to help that happen. And I don't like to engage in change in very, very large organizations. In my career, I've discovered that that's not where I'm effective. I have a less chance of being successful there. And so I tend to be very selective about what organizations I work with. I make sure that there are smaller organizations or mid-size organizations where I think there really is going to be the ability to have a broad enough impact to actually help people create the change that they decide they want to create. I don't go in with I think the first thing is to let go of any of my assumptions about how and why they have to change, but be very, keep that very open mind, very curious about what needs to happen. And then that helps me understand what the next steps are. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I tend to start in the management chain before I talk to individual contributors or teams of people.
Mm-hmm. On the Discord, we had several responses. Jibazuzi says, my immediate response would be, what do you have in mind? If somebody asks me to lead an agile change, I want to know what agile means to them, what they think the change will look like, and what my role in leading such a change would be, the time frame they imagine, the problems they're hoping to solve, things they've tried, and how this has gone so far. And this can range from 5 minutes to hours. From there, I might offer a couple of suggestions, both to be helpful right away and to gauge the response. Drew Ryan says, I'll give a somewhat lame answer, but I was thinking about the way I've approached this in the past. First, listen to the organization and the teams, understand their unique position and challenges. Second, find the most meaningful thing that can help that team improve in their unique situation. It could be mindset, management, focusing on value, thinking small, technical practices, or something else. What are your thoughts about that, Diana? What would you this idea of starting small, starting with something meaningful? What do you see is usually helpful for organizations?
Well, I do think the larger the organization, as you get larger and larger, that prototyping, basically, prototype the change. How can we pick something small and try it out there, thin vertical slice of the change we want to make, right? Mm-hmm. How do we use some of those principles about what would be meaningful? What would 5 teams, if we could get them to do? I mean, there's a wonderful story about an organization I work with that had a special project, and so they reorganized their teams so that they could just put 5 teams on this special project, and then adopted Agile, just a form of Agile with those 5 teams. And when that was successful, then they generalized in kind of a rolling wave to all the rest of the teams in all their organization. And then they were very happy with the outcomes. But they took the time and they gave that, year and a half to try it out before they started generalizing it with the whole organization. And I think that was smart. I mean, people feel pressured to get things done quickly, but we also have to think about what is the human scale of our change, and what can humans do. So I think that's a real consideration. Yeah.
Jerome shared a story on the Discord. Jerome said, "This question is perfect for me. I just started at that. What step would you start with? I just started a new position last week, and this is very much what they are looking for. The first thing I did was make sure the manager was on board and willing to discuss and change the things that surface. I did this before I accepted the position. Once I accepted the position, the first thing I did was make a 30, 60, 90-day plan for myself. As stated above, I've only been part of the Agile community for about 2.5 years. This will be my first attempt at leading an Agile change. I didn't switch orgs, so the idea of Agile isn't new to this group. They just weren't the focus of our initial transformation. As others have stated, my first 30 days theme is observation mode. I've been keeping a list of observations as I attend meetings. I've started coming up with the questions I'll be asking people when I review the teams. I've set a work in progress limit of 1 team to start with. We are finishing week 2 today, and so far things have been going well." That's an exciting position to be in. I remember my first really big change, and it's both scary and exciting. Sounds like Jerome's on the right track, though.
Yeah. Looks like he's here with us. I wonder if he wants to say any more in person.
Yeah, perhaps. Jerome, well, I don't know if this is the same Jerome or not, but Jerome, are you the Jerome who wrote on the Discord, and would you like to participate? If so, go ahead and raise your hand. Yeah. Actually, though, we are just about out of time. It looks like that we do have Jerome, and the picture looks the same as on the Discord. So, Jerome, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, yeah, tell us a little bit more about the change you're going through.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much said everything that there was to say, unless there's more specific questions that you wanted about like what we're doing. But yeah, so I've been doing it for 2.5 years. I fell in love with it. I've only seen it in this one organization that I'm a part of, so I don't necessarily know all of the things that consultants or whatever happen. So I only have very limited experience. But yeah, they basically approached me and said, we are looking for someone to help us in our part of the organization because they are not straight development. And we think that we like what we've been seeing out of you. I was, a scrum master for a few different teams. I've been a part of the change agents, and I basically threw myself into it. So I just wanted to, when they approached me, I was like, okay, if I come in and do this, here's, I'm not going to say demands like Jay was saying, but I'm going to need your buy-in because otherwise this isn't going to work. And I'm not going to accept the position because I'm happy where I am now. Yeah. And I was a people manager, so it was quite a different shift for me.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. I love your background, by the way. I wish we had time for a longer conversation, but as usual, the time has flown by and we are at the end of our time box. As I've mentioned in the past, we have a book giveaway. This is the last book giveaway this week, but this week is the physical copy of the book to one randomly drawn person who participated in the Discord. And Jerome, that was actually you. So congratulations. I will get in touch with you on the Discord about how to get your copy. Next time, we'll be talking about scaling agility. Our special guest is Bas Fode, who is the co-creator of Large Scale Scrum. That is Les. That is one of the earliest and best known Agile scaling approaches. So don't miss that discussion next Friday. Thank you very much to Diana. Diana, thank you so much for joining us and pushing through some trolls in the Zoom meeting. I do appreciate that. And it was great hearing your thoughts as well.
Yeah. Well, when you're a grandma, nothing any of the adolescents do can really surprise you anymore.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of you for participating. That is it for this time. Thanks you very much. And I will see you all next time.